Hi, I'm Rhiannon. I'm mum to Joseph and Dan. Joseph is 13 weeks now and doing much better. It was about a month ago I had to take him through to A&E up at Barnsley. He'd never had any problems before that. He arrived on his due date and all his checkups after that had been fine. It was just the normal things you worry about with a baby. I think you just get by on adrenaline in the first months. It's definitely not sleep. It was a Thursday afternoon when I noticed Joseph was a bit off it. My mum comes to help with Dan. He's nearly 4, but he's got a couple of serious health conditions, which means he needs a bit more care and support. Mum's brilliant with him and she collects him from nursery most days. Now I've got Joseph. Anyway, I was upstairs feeding Joseph and my mum came up to say that she was back off home. She said she'd noticed he was a bit more sniffly. He wasn't feeding that well that day either, which wasn't like him. My mum said to keep an eye on him. I was really worried, to be honest. I didn't know if it was a cold or COVID. I mean, you just don't know, do you? We've had so many health problems with Dan that I just kept thinking that it was a sign of something that I hadn't spotted. Anyway, I didn't take my eyes off him and he seemed to quieten down that evening, but the next morning it seemed like he was struggling with his nose and his breathing. I left it a bit, but I didn't want to take any chances, so I took Dan to my mum's and I took Joseph up to A&E. It's obviously not somewhere that you want to be, especially at the minute. But we've had to go before with Dan, so I can talk calmly about it now, but I was just on autopilot. It was all a bit of a blur. We got there at 8 in the morning and there was already a few people there. Joseph was seen to quite quickly, which really worried me because it made me think that it was something serious. And they don't mess around with babies, do they? They told me Joseph most likely got a viral illness called RSV. I'd never heard of it before, but they said that he didn't need any medicines or treatment. I was terrified that he'd get worse, but the nurses were brilliant. They took us through to another section to keep him under observation. It's the new bit where they look after all the kids. It definitely felt more suitable for us in there. It wasn't relaxing, but it was bright and nice for the kids. And it meant they could keep all the kids together rather than mixing with the adults. Luckily, he didn't need to be admitted, which was a relief in some ways, but worrying in others. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to manage with Dan if they kept him in, but I was also worried that if I took him home, he might get worse. You feel so helpless when they're babies and they can't tell you what's wrong with them. But the nurse explained what RSV was and the things to look out for and talked me through his feeds. They kept him in for the rest of the day and he didn't get any worse and he started to take his bottles, which they said was a good sign that he was okay enough. They felt happy to discharge him, but they discharged him to the children's community team, who I could ring if I had any worries or if things changed over the weekend. That was Friday evening. I'm not sure what's scarier, taking your baby into hospital or taking him home again. I stayed up all night with him. He sleeps in my room, so I can keep an eye on him. I was still concerned about his breathing the next morning, but the children's nurse was brilliant. She called first thing to see how he was and made an appointment to come see him. They did a few checks and told me everything was normal, which was a massive relief for me and really helped to reassure me. Things can change so quickly. Obviously, we kept a close eye on him all Saturday, and thankfully, by Sunday morning, Joseph seemed to be much better. It really made a difference to know that I wasn't going home on my own, but that I had the nurse's support and I could call her